Meet SAE International. You might not know us, but we've been with you. For the past 100 years, we've been revolutionizing transportation and mobility, partnering and supporting the dreamers, innovators, and can-doers who are changing the world. It's the child whose future career as an engineer will be shaped by our STEM education programs. It's the businesswoman boarding her flight with peace of mind, knowing that our committees have created the standards that ensure she gets from Detroit to Delhi and back again safely. It's the parents-to-be who are sleeping soundly, knowing that their electric car is fully charged and ready when it's go time. Driven by a passion to advance mobility knowledge and solutions, SAE's global community of over 200,000 engineers, technical experts, and volunteers continues to develop and curate the most reliable and comprehensive collection of engineering resources and consensus-based standards on Earth. The next mobility revolution is upon us. Connected and automated, electrified and sustainable. SAE will be here, as we have for the last 100 years, moving the world forward.
Hey everybody, Mark Z here. Welcome to Supercharged again. Winter day here in Detroit, not too bad. We're actually in Southfield, Michigan, and we're here to visit an organization called USCAR. They're not really a company, they're an organization that works on really important projects for the mobility industry. So we're going to go inside and check it out. Hey Steve, how you doing,
Mark,
man?
Good to see you again. Welcome to USCAR in Southfield, Michigan.
Yeah, thank
Good to have you.
Yeah, where's the assembly line? No, just
oh,
kidding.
This is a little different. We don't have an assembly line here, but we do a lot of cool stuff. Let's go talk about it if you got a time.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Well, hey, we're here at USCAR. Thanks for taking the time and chatting with us, a fellow SAE fellow, right?
Yeah. Been a member of SAE since the early 90s.
90s.
As a student, actually.
Yes,
so over 30 years.
Wow. Before I was born. No, just kidding. Wow. Where did you work on Formula SAE or anything?
I did. I worked on Formula SAE and Mini Baja SAE.
Wow.
I'll put a shout out for my undergrad when I was there. Kettering University now. Still very active in the competitions and usually does very well in the snowmobile competition.
Yeah.
Predates me. Right. I predate the snowmobile, but that's okay.
Yeah. So that's cool. We're back here in Detroit section of SAE, and probably USCAR we're at today is something many of our members might have not even heard of. So tell us, what are you doing now?
So first off, a lot of people don't know the name USCAR, and it's pronounced USCAR, not USCAR. And it stands for the United States Council for Automotive Research. So we've been around for since basically the early days after the National Cooperative Research Act. This was an act that was in Congress in the 80s that allowed companies to come together and work on pre-collaborative research for the benefit of all. So we have to emphasize it's pre-collaborative. We don't do anything competitive. So there's So a lot of our work is a little bit earlier stage, but a lot of it will make it into production. So maybe we can tell you a little bit about USCAR. So some of you may not be aware, most people are not aware, that USCAR is a collaborative technology company for Ford, GM, and Stellantis. So we used to call them the big three, sometimes referred to as the Detroit three, but we represent a large portion of the domestic auto industry. So we are located in Southfield, Michigan, so we're centrally located between the three headquarters. So, Southfield is called itself the center of it all. And it's centrally actually is pretty much in the center, and that was a strategic reason. And we also have two wholly owned subsidiaries most people are not aware of. We're very clever in the naming, USABC and USAMP. So we like the word US.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it's the United States Advanced Battery Consortium, which has actually been around a couple of years longer than USCAR. And we also have the USAMP, is the US Automotive Materials Partnership. And they are set up as separate companies for different agreements with the federal government and other partners, but otherwise they're wholly owned, and a lot of our members all work in the same direction. We're trying to better the domestic auto industry as much as we can. One thing you might not know this, but under one of our companies, the USABC, the US Advanced Battery Consortium, it's been around for over 30 years. I would say there's a good chance, if you look at some of these vehicles here, we have a plug-in hybrid vehicle, we have a full electric vehicle. If you have an electrified vehicle in the United States, some of our tech is almost certainly in it. Depends, some of our electric motor tech is probably in there from another project. So we're very proud of that fact that we're helping the domestic industry. So it's not just batteries from overseas that we buy and put into our vehicles. There actually is some know-how here in the United States, and we want to keep that going, and that's where this next award, we're going to develop the next generation of batteries for the United States.
So there's really no overlap at all with SAE in terms of, your members and everybody collaborates, but this is something that we really, dearly need in our industry, this sort of pre-collaboration, pre-competitive collaboration. You guys are doing some really good stuff.
Yeah, and Mark, you may not even realize a lot of the stuff we do, we actually do collaborate heavily with SAE. So in some cases, we'll do something, develop our own standard internally. And we do this for a reason. In some cases, it's just easier for me to get our members together. We agree on something, and then sometimes we'll just hand it off to SAE to do the further maintenance, because we're not in the business of necessarily maintaining this. We're not a library, whereas SAE is very good at this, maintaining standards, updating. But if we see something new, we just kicked off something that's very exciting, smart manufacturing roadmap. And this is something, eventually maybe we'll transition this to SAE as well. We have an industrial communication standard that actually is now being transitioned to SAE. So we're quite heavily involved with SAE. And I want to put one out there. One of our council members, Dan Nicholson from General Motors, you probably know him, very heavily involved in SAE.
Absolutely,
as well. So
yeah.
we are not like this, but we're in there with you.
Yeah. So how does that all start? Is there like somebody floats an idea with you all, or it has to be, vetted with the government? Is there any government engagement here, or not really?
Yeah, it's a little confusing because they use a similar name. They call themselves the US Drive Partnership. And that is the DOE's premier partnership for on-road transportation. It's run with, in Washington, D.C., Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office. And USCAR is the official member of the US Drive Partnership. But we also, our members all have seats on the executive steering group, so they have a leadership role in this. And so we're heavily involved in that, and there's joint tech teams. We also overlap some with another heavy-duty partnership from the Department of Energy, 21st Century Truck Partnership. Now, I don't think everyone knows, but we actually do all of our members make medium-duty vehicles. They make professional vehicles. So it's not just light duty. It's not just the cool cars you see on here. There are work trucks and such. So we're actually members in both, but USCAR is only a member of the US Drive partnership.
I got it. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So what's next here on your agenda? You got some background stories. You got some really good future stories. Anything that you can clue us in on where you're going with this?
As you can see, this is sort of the evolution of USCAR. It hasn't been called USCAR for 30 years, even though we are over 30 years old. So it all started with the National Cooperative Research Act, 1984, and there was a Automotive Composites Consortium was one of the groups that started. We had this is the Emissions Research Consortium. So these were groups that started for specific purposes. And then one of our wholly owned companies, USABC, the US Advanced Battery Consortium, actually is older than USCAR, the United States Council for Automotive Research, by a little over a year. And VRP is the Vehicle Recycling Partnership. So now everything's sort of fallen under the umbrella of USCAR, including USAMP, the U.S. Automotive Materials Partnership. We have a couple other groups. UCAP is the Electrical Wiring Components Applications Partnership. And I just like to say, this has been a great 30-year run. I have not been here for the whole 30 years. I've heard the name. Really excited to be here in the last year, and hope we can keep going and keep this thing going for many years after I retire.
Well, right on. So some of the things that occurs to me is that, you've ever heard of this thing called 48 volts?
Very familiar with 48 volts. Yes, there's a reason that's 48 volts and not 60 volts and not 32 volts.
Yeah.
We could probably do a whole another session on that.
Okay.
But those are the sort of things where I say you really need some cooperation, because the industry can't come out and have every individual company, for instance, say, I want to do a 32 volt, a 48 volt system, a 60 volt, 200 volt, whatever it be. This really is where USCAR sort of hits its stride in helping to coordinate these groups together. And I'd like to say we can do it pretty quickly, because we have direct access to the actual experts in the companies. So rather than some, I'm going to say larger international groups where they send negotiators and such, we go direct to the engineers, the scientists that are actually boots on the ground doing the work in the lab.
Yeah, that's quite a way to optimize the work. In SAE, I love SAE and the cooperative standards development that we do.
Yeah.
They have a process, they have, certain consensus they have to build, but you guys get right out of the gate, and then, as you say, if it works out, then you can hand it over to SAE and they can adjust course if needed. So
yeah, we like to say, in some cases, we love working with SAE. In some cases, when we think we can go faster, we'll go our own way, and then we'll hand it off to SE at the end. Whatever we feel is the most efficient way to do it, we'll do it.
Yeah, that's great. So what are you doing next then? And then do you have some other things queued up here? What's the next steps?
So I'll give you a little overview of sort of our range. So we're a small office. We don't have a lot of USCAR employees, but we facilitate a large group of over 500 different technical experts in the member companies, Ford, GM, and Stellantis. And we actually have over 160 projects, over 50 different working groups. But just some major technology fields I put out here. Advanced propulsion. So if you think about it, this is everything from, used to think of it as just engines and transmissions and axles. Well, now electrification's coming in. So huge area for us to get into that. Electrical electronics. When you start talking about connecting to automated vehicles, huge research area to go into. It's no longer wiring and connectors and simple things like that. It's chips, it's sensors, it's software. Energy storage, the USABC, the U.S. Advanced Battery Consortium. We recently just received a large award. We're under negotiation with DOE, but we received a $60 million award from the Department of Energy to continue to develop the next generation of batteries. One thing I want to mention about energy storage, very exciting for us, we're actually expanding to medium duty and heavy duty batteries. So, if you think back 10, 15 years ago, people thought it was impossible to electrify larger trucks, especially large Class 8 trucks.
Yeah,
they don't think that's impossible anymore. So we actually are going to expand our portfolio into that area. We work heavily with the Department of Energy on this in the Vehicle Technologies Office. Hydrogen and fuel cells. Again, you go back 30-ish years, we've heard hydrogen on and off again. It's been fuel du jour almost by the decade. But actually, there are some areas now where it's starting to look like it could be in certain markets cost competitive, and we just want to make sure that we're putting our input in. And we don't really get too much into the heavy-duty hydrogen in our world, but we're very heavily involved in the medium-duty hydrogen fuel cell area. Manufacturing, huge area for us. As I mentioned earlier, we have a smart manufacturing roadmap that we have recently released. If you don't know what smart manufacturing is, just think of, you hear these fancy words, Internet of Things, connected. It's the same thing in manufacturing. Everything now is starting to be connected to the internet, talk to each other. How are you going to utilize that sort of service and that capability to domestic manufacturing for our partners, our suppliers? And so we decided as a group, let's go into this area. Let's give some suggestions for the automotive landscape on how the United States can actually improve the domestic manufacturing, improve our competitiveness with some of the other, offshore companies and such. Materials, USAMP. We got to say this. Everything's made out of a material. We know this, except for software. Everything is made out of material. So if you touch it, you drive it, you sit on it, it's made out of material. Some things right now, we've always been really heavily on lightweighting, trying to lightweight the vehicles. More recent push, let's say sustainable lightweighting, but sustainability becoming a big push. Recyclability of vehicles has always been an area we were interested in. Becoming more so now when we start talking about getting to the more exotic materials, and we start talking about electrifying. How are you going to design vehicles that are no longer made out of 90-some% steel, aluminum, glass, and rubber? Now we're starting to put some very expensive rare earth metals in there. We want to recover them, you know, even though in a small trace. So that's an area we look at. And one that's probably everyone can agree with, probably one of the most important things we work is safety. We want to do everything we can to make the car as safe as possible. And this is a great area where we work in pre-competitive, but we want to get this in the market as fast as possible. Any safety improvements we can work on together, it just benefits everybody in the industries.
So let me ask you a question about, in general, some of these fields here. You know, how do you measure, or how do you get that metric that, oh yeah, what we've done is really going to make a difference? Is it something that gets launched in production, or something that maybe is 30 years down the road? I mean, how do your members say, hey, it's been worth it?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, you know the auto industry. You worked in it. There's always a boss. It's like, show me you gave me the value.
Yeah.
What did you do? And I would like to say I've been working in research now for a few decades. It's a little tougher. I used to work in production. I was like, I put this car on the road. It was very simple to measure. I sold so many vehicles. I made so much profit. Research is a little tougher. Some of the things we're working on are very early. So they use these things, TRL levels, technology readiness level. We don't go into the details of that, but some of the things we work on are very early. These are things, they may not actually make it to production for a decade. Theoretically, maybe in 2 decades. And some of our projects, because you're in the research world, the technology may surpass what we're working on by that time, and it may be irrelevant. However, we do actually have a very good track record of putting things into production. Not all research has to be with the mad scientists mixing things in a lab. Some of it is actually very, very applied, even though we call it research. I would like to say our manufacturing group and our safety group are 2 of the ones that are probably the most directly put things in the field. Actually, all of our groups are very good at putting things in the field, but safety is the one we push really hard on to get that into the field as fast as possible. Any safety improvement, any innovation we have, we want to put it in there. And then manufacturing, this is, again, something, this directly impacts the bottom line, impacts the productivity. So these are things we want to get into the field as fast as possible. So a lot of times you'll see what looks like a research project for a new manufacturing process. Recently, I was down in Corktown. I saw a very cool thing. Basically trying to make a more sustainable, cheaper, and quicker way to make large injection molding. Very, very cool. Things that used to be multi-materials, a lot of assembly, trying to do it all at once. And this will be good for everyone in the industry, by the way, once this is developed. This process is developed and moves into production.
Yeah. So again, pointing out that in your name, the R stands for research, and that's really what you guys are all about.
Yes, we are a research group. We are not a production group. We don't actually make a part. We don't sell anything. We like to say we're really good at spending money. We're not too good at making money. We don't actually make any money. Wow. We exist for the sole purpose of enabling collaborative research with our members.
But there is benefit, and so tell me, anything come across your mind? What's like the biggest bang you guys could, no pun intended for safety, but I mean, what do you think has really made the difference, at least in your tenure here, that you can point to? What project?
So my tenure is a little short, so you don't want to necessarily use my tenure. I've been here less than 1 year.
Okay.
I'm coming from the Department of Energy's National Lab System most recently, although I started my career over a decade at Ford Motor Company as a development engineer. But in this time, I don't want to say, well, there's one specific thing, because each one of these groups is doing tremendous things, has tremendous impact in their field. In some cases, we have people that are recognized as world experts in their field, and we're really lucky that we get to work with these people and say they're our USCAR collaborators. We can't walk around calling each other doctors and all this other stuff, because it just gets too long. Everybody we work with, we have a lot of educated people, a lot of recognized people. We have fellows. We have a bunch of fellows at SAE, which I want to point out. We have quite a few fellows from SAE that are USCAR participants. So we're really proud of all of our teams, all of our people. It's one of those things at the end of the year, there's not enough awards and not enough time to recognize everybody. And so I will say I'm a little dreading that time of the year because I'm going to feel like I know I'm going to leave out somebody well-deserving, and that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, Well, world turns, and we all try to come back next year and do what we can to make it better.
Yeah.
So.
And I also I gotta say something for the unsung heroes of USCAR are the staff. I might be a face, I'm up here talking, but the reality is most of the work is done by my staff. So I got to recognize I got outstanding staff.
That's great.
The place wouldn't exist without them, and
well, it's great.
Big shout out for them.
Great. Well, as we wrap up, Steve, is there something else you want to share with us here? Not to take away from the great world that you're working in, but what's next? I mean, the next big thing. You've got it all mapped out here, but you use your imagination. Flying cars. What do you think the research point is pointing to?
I think. I don't want to say there's a big thing, but I think that the evolution of the vehicle is pretty clear from my perspective as a researcher for the last few decades. Cars inevitably, every year they get cleaner, they get more efficient, they get safer, and they get more fun in some regard. So, Mark, we're a little older. The idea of a CD player, the CD didn't exist when we started in the auto industry. Now we're talking about everything's connected, self-driving. Those will just become more prevalent. Pretty soon it'll be ubiquitous I hope to see all the best safety features become standardized and ubiquitous in all the vehicles, and it can't happen fast enough, honestly. Anything we do to save lives, to me, would be a thing we should push for. But efficiency is going to continuously improve. And this is regardless of electrification. All powertrains are going to get more efficient. Emissions, constantly improving. Criteria pollutants. We have a large group always looking for, depending on who you talk to. If you go back to when I started my career in the 90s, I mean, we're about a 1,000th the level of certain criteria pollutants, and we're still going down, which is great. In a lot of cases, I don't think people realize in a lot of cases, you actually are an air cleaner. The exhaust could be theoretically cleaning the air in some areas. So that's a great success story, I'd like to say. And we just hope to keep it going. And the other thing we got to make sure we don't forget about is we have to train the next generation of scientists and engineers. I'm getting towards the latter half of my career. Not going to comment on your age, but I don't know which one of us will work longer, but we do have to start training some of these younger people to enter the field. It's been a big problem that people thought the auto industry isn't sexy, and I think it is. Look at all the cool stuff we're doing. It's not just, writing apps and cool tech stuff. Vehicles are still fun, and they don't have to be muscle cars. There's something for everybody to work in the auto industry.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's an excellent message, and I think we ought to take that forward. So.
Yes, and we're here. We want to partner with groups like SAE, other organizations, do anything we can in all this area. So
all right.
We're open for business on this regard.
Well, thank you for your
Thanks
time.
a lot, Mark.
Yeah, it's
really
been
great. Thanks for coming out to Southfield.
Thank you.
All right, Mark.
Man, thanks
a lot. Thanks for coming to USCAR. Keep in touch.
Enjoy.
All right, bye.
Well, Supercharged Day, everybody.